Raja Chibundo, and Romatis of the Nepal, China, Pretty, and the train, Soana, Netan, Jenada, Rodan, Jenada, into Ma Chambata, Minji Kola, La Zerente Yusaretini, Narankan, Shishi, China Pashains.
So this is Drupon Palkyi's second visit to the United States, but the first time to visit this center, her first time here in Albuquerque and in New Mexico. She said it's a beautiful place. She's really enjoyed being here, she has enjoyed it a lot and is really happy to be here with all of you this evening. And she understands that the schedule for this evening is to talk a bit about compassion, loving compassion, practicing loving compassion in everyday life. So she said she will share with you what she has found most useful and whatever she can.
Ma Jenny on the Sinji Sindishing, they are Duke don't want Duke Maris, and so Sinji Sinding. They want Duke, they are Dramashi, no give us Sinji Lola, Unity, Intelligent Forward, Sinji Law, the show nothing, Forward and Canterbury.
So she said that, first of all, it's helpful to really have a sense that everybody's really in the same boat, that we all share kind of this fundamental desire to be happy, and that nobody wants to suffer. And so first of all, understanding that fundamental sameness, and then recognizing that even though everyone wishes for happiness, so often our actions are actually in contradiction to that happiness, they're like the opposite, creating the causes of suffering rather than that of happiness. And so for that we simply wander in cyclic existence, or we wander in samsara.
Roman Tarchik, Toronto, Chek Susu la Devan to take a geotakaris. Then the Devar Toxic geodrepsik humoris. Then the Motoka in Toronto, Che Simchi Tundo in Chila, Jamba Gomnichi, Jamba Gomnichi, Compajam, Nirejin to Moto Compajam Joanna, but Roma in Sojo Yakachi,
and so all beings, this wish, this fundamental sameness and the wish for happiness is shared by all living beings without exception. So even animals, even the smallest of insects and tiny creatures. And so it's important to extend that intention for practicing love and compassion to even the smallest of living beings. So being conscious, for instance, when we walk, when we walk outside and there are ants and insects, that are, in our path, to remember to be aware of those beings and to be careful, not to step on them, because they, wishing for happiness too, they don't want to, no being, every being values its life, the life force. So to not, cut their life short, to be careful not to step on them. This is one way to also practice bringing that kind of, intention for loving kindness and compassion into our everyday life.
심지 탐쟁 그 파마 마지 직장이요 말이스. 참마 파마리 다 드레인드나 나 무조 참마 기와 회만이 네 레컨드는 무조 근데 정거야 돼 드레인 근데 정거야 돼 무조 파마다 빈자 스모다 조조 디디 찬 무조 드레인드는 점이어스.
And so of all living beings, there's no being that is not, because we've all taken countless births and cyclic existence. And so there is no being that we have not had some sort of really close connection with in some life or another. So of all sentient beings, all beings have at one point in time or another been our own mother or father, or we've had other types of relationships with them, siblings, they've been our sister or our brother, but we've shared closeness with every single living being that exists in some life, or another.
근데 어떻게 파마 어떻게 파마 분야인 바데 저지 뭐시 소이는 근데 다니시는데 용적으로서 또자 자스 니신 차단이 그런 것도 되는 거와 찬적을 요래서
And so when there's this kind of understanding of equal closeness with all beings, that all beings have been our parents, have been our siblings, have shared some very close relationship with us, then it kind of diminishes the extreme of friends or loved ones and enemies, because everyone is like a loved one. Everyone is can be considered with the same feeling of closeness. And so this helps to diminish the mind of attachment and aversion. And it is this mind of attachment and aversion that really perpetuates our wandering in cyclic existence.
아니 레스이데 마라이나 볼라 치리데 dana 아메리카라 유럽게라 용고야 니마케 용고산이 센의 용을 참마 레탄 틴탄 팀저스 치킬런 저는 것도 아마 변자인바 딘디디 토토그레스 레게 딘디디 소소 저디지와 마마고도 디디디니 드는 좀 요래 덴드 뭐소 참마 가르치는 잠바 소소라 잠바 유나 아니 가르치는 핀조 빈자 있는 자 파마 있는 자 남에서 차이는 자 뭐지 그런 년대 데트거레스
And so everything that we experience in our life, everything, and all of our connections with others are based on karma. Everything is a result of karma. So for instance, she said, in her own life, when she was born in Tibet, and as she was growing up in Tibet, she actually had never even heard of America or Europe. She never, and then, when she had heard of those places, she never would have dreamed that she would end up in Europe or she would end up in America. But because of the karma, it was her karma that led her to come to Europe, that led her to come here. And so everything, that we experience in our lives, all of the connections that we have with different people are without a doubt based on some sort of previous karmic connection that we've had in the past. And so again, to have a recognition of this and therefore a feeling of closeness based on the understanding of the fact that we are all deeply connected. And so therefore we can have love for all beings equally and the wish to benefit all sentient beings equally, really recognizing everyone as like near and dear as a parent or a family member.
아니 간신나 다 잠바스니데 또 말tin changres malaperi ta matike pula champo kandeji tambo jogona yu kaps kange dongha da gola kortindisha chacho da korta ngoso ko zedang re bubak zeda no tindije kanga dongha maje kaps ta pula je kala sama shi chayala tongya ma shi tongya la deni tuglo juma shi juma la keja she ma shi 제야라 그냥 라르 데나지게 마나시 무슨 파마 마제비지요 마나시 파이너드 마이너드 참마 파마 마제비 직감이 디디디 잠바지 공수는다 수소가 파마케야 뽀진게 가실라 양 파마케 강에 체케요 파마케 강에 체스미는 다 수소게 레 인상고 less than the chukaresan jonga of son Pakasa he mala than lengi draw me on the chess. She suso ke lesa shall take it. That is some land desert.
Digere Pasha Zane.
Mala dan lengi draw on the chess. That con Sanjay shared you the capsa. Then it covered children in Pumatus. Paranke Page shot Sandus. Then it lengi pa McGiver draw the panches. Ta, Mutsoke, jazz in the solo caressing. Jazz in the parropo mudilla draco maris. Musu jatting on the caressina, so can do cha, shedam, the mo, my dear. That is so jatting this one, and then Zambel in the Ganga Yoda Yomaris. That's solo a parropo chick, jazz in the etiquette. Then it muso pan to pajan surgery mato, yomaritained. Jang with it is also control. Majar Chado, the son de Gores. The sorting this one is also a lem give Sahalitata, Muso Nang Chu Late, Paresin Moto Tas, the Cellulo Chidea, the Deo Chaya Pintamari. Sanjay the Deva Topsy Juris. In the Deva Topsona, the Ninjura Yomares. That in the Deva Matoina, the Nimuso, Hamson Koala, Colonna Shinjin. Any koala man for the tongue is on the chair. Any ganger donger, the titanja, notice.
So we often, a way that we traditionally cultivate the quality of love in the context of Buddhist practice is by reflecting on the kindness and love of our mother. So thinking about the love that a mother has, for instance, towards her child, because from the time that a child is conceived, and then as long as the mother is carrying the child for that 9 months or so, she is really nurturing that child with her very body, undergoing all sorts of difficulties and hardships for the sake of that child. And then once the child is born, from the time that the child is an infant and is very, and is pretty much helpless and can't feed itself, cannot clothe itself, then the mother really looks after with so much tenderness and care. She nurtures and looks after and attends to her infant, her child, all the way, from infancy, growing into, going through the different stages of development and growth. The love and affection of a mother towards her child is like a very pure example of love. And so then, but this kind of love is often tainted by attachment because it is specific to like the child, or this love that we have towards others is often, it's conditional, or it's based on some attachment, and the roles that that we have with one another change so frequently from lifetime to lifetime. So there's the story, that some of you may be familiar with from the words of my perfect teacher, when the noble Kashyapa witnesses this scene where he sees the past life relationships, that somebody who is, a woman who has her child on her lap, and then she's eating a fish, and the dog is trying to steal the fish or to eat the fish, and he sees that, oh, the child was her enemy in a past life, and the dog that she's kicking away day, was
Yeah,
so the fish that she's eating was the father in a past life, and then the dog that she's kicking away was her mother. So he sort of says, oh my, look at how ridiculous kind of the circus of samsara is. She coddles her enemy on her lap, and she eats the flesh of her own father and kicks away her mother. And so it is to sort of show kind of the arbitrariness of these designations of enemy, loved one, friend, because these roles are constantly changing. So this designation that we sort of have, towards some as being enemies is really not the right designation, because there aren't actually any true outer enemies. The true enemy is the enemy of our own afflicted mind states. So the enemy of attachment, the enemy of anger, the enemy of ignorance, jealousy, and arrogance. There isn't actually a truly existent external enemy that there's no reality to that designation. And so really the true enemy is the enemy of our own ignorance, the enemy of our own confusion. And so when we realize that, then there is a clear objective that we can put our energy towards in this life, which is to create, the circumstances to first of all subdue the enemy of the afflictive emotions, and to gather the accumulations in such a way, not just so that with the objective of having happiness in this life. Yes, they lead to, more peace and happiness and well-being and good fortune in this life and in future lives. But the objective really is can be to reach the unchanging happiness, or the final liberation and awakening of Buddhahood. Because until that is achieved, then there is never any end to wandering in the various states of cyclic existence or samsara, sometimes experiencing the difficulties of the lower realms, sometimes experiencing the temporary states of happiness of gods and humans, but always sort of wandering in the endless cycle of samsara.
Tene chamba yupe mnatela lekong leka landrona tene ledo ke ropa te sope chambo chagres. Tene chik lekong leka level in da sakang leka lena chamba yuna tene magawo cheada tene jose kala te zuana chamba yuna tene kala te le shimbo. Tene kongro tsawo dreje tene tene kala sun tene kala te le shimbo mipa. Tene lero te la chopa shuya. Leka kare nangme inada nang pimtsu chuga jime inada pinja inada chamba mina tene nangme kanga nyoda tsama tene chombo yares. Tene lekong leka lena tarang re. Chamba yupu meche ina lekong leka ina me tsama pitsu kong lesha si tene gawa chungya da me gemo shoya da tene jampo. Chi chala ina chi pen jampu ngani shaya. Chamba tambodela, chamba chego chimbores.
And so when we, whatever we do in our daily lives, and whoever we interact with, when we really understand the value of having loving kindness and affection towards everyone that we interact with, in our workplace, for instance, and in all of our activities, when we really know that through making an effort to express kindness to others and to have a loving attitude towards others, how much benefit that benefits our own situation, how much happiness it brings to ourselves and to others, then we can really have a strong, a real commitment to cultivating that in our everyday lives. So for instance, in our workplace, or if we work, for instance, in a restaurant, and we make food, then if we have a loving attitude when we make food, that food carries the energy of that love and affection, and it benefits the people who eat it. It becomes more delicious. When we make food with an angry mind or with anger in our hearts and mind, that food becomes less delicious. And when we, in our workplace, when we really make an effort to have an affectionate and loving attitude towards our colleagues, then that creates an atmosphere of, general harmony and well-being. When we have that same love and affection in our home life with our spouses, with our siblings, then there's less conflict, there's less difficulty, there's more harmony, and there's more happiness. And the result is, when we smile at others and we treat others with kindness, we receive the same. Others smile at us in return. They treat us affectionately and with, gentleness and kindness. And so we can see how important having an attitude of loving kindness is in every area of our lives, how much benefit it can bring.
lekona leka lena ta ja khalasena leka karen chunjigin karena sem yabu goya kechimboris sem yabu jemena ta nano ne chudre gomje chlondo mentropaja sondena chi chudre yaka pinto shiwa miba ta chudre yate nangba chayate sem zo chade yores sem zo de karechade yinping de lo jang ninji sancho sem de gores jang ninji sancho sem de yusongena di modela dini sacha kawan rona chi matsangma gawa de tona dini sacha de la shibde chet shime na de gawa chia dinde je chawres jang ninji mina nano ne nyamne chi cholo de yuba mara je dini karesna je 추다 쉬진들was 추 투델이 다게 추신이데 샘들지 다야래 추다 추야고 투데 달라 아니 쉬진들와 요레스 곰타 니몬 총아 아 곰잡데 달라 니몬 총을 도고 아 니몬 체르로 드니 쉬진들와 맞아 드드드 차대와나 드니 양 ngajar komula yunte che chama la hin na hi cha de yore den de che chu sinye de ni sim jurji ta ya de che cha de le ka ka le nang le ne de se de me ya ko cha ya mal thun de ya ko cha shamba ta hin je ke de ni shira ke ta hi che ne de la ro pa che ya de che cha de yore.
And so if, for instance, so whether it's like a worldly or Dharma related, the more that we cultivate these qualities of love and kindness and compassion, the more success we will have, both in our worldly objectives and endeavors and in our Dharma activities. So the purpose of Dharma practice, meditation and Dharma practice, is to tame our minds and to develop more of these qualities, these altruistic qualities, to purify the heart and mind. And if we meditate, but we're not really seeing a change in this way, then something is wrong. Because mainly what we're doing as Buddhist practitioners or spiritual practitioners is working with our own minds. And the result of our practice should be that our love and compassion for others is growing, the wish to benefit others is growing, that we have more love, compassion, and bodhicitta And as a result, that our lives are becoming happier, and that, and we can see that when we carry those qualities into the world with us, that it's contagious, it spreads, and other people respond in kind. Kindness is returned with kindness. And the energy is palpable, even when you are in the company of like dogs and cats and animals. When there is an atmosphere of love and goodwill, animals respond to this. All beings respond to this. On the other hand, when we walk into an environment where there's a lot of hatred and there's a lot of negative kind of intention or ill will, we can immediately sense that. We can immediately feel that. And so the sign of being a Dharma practitioner is that we become more gentle, our minds become more tame, we become more peaceful. And so it is said that, with the activities of, for instance, listening to Dharma teachings or study, that the result of study or listening to the Dharma is that the mind becomes more tame, or becomes more pacified, that we become more gentle and kind of calm. And it is said that the results or the sign of meditation is that our afflicted mind states, the afflictive emotions diminish, they become fewer, they gradually diminish. And so again, if we meditate, if we practice Dharma, but then we get up off the cushion and then, we're just like full of afflictive emotions and we treat others badly, then this is not like what should be the result of our Dharma practice. So if our mind is not becoming tamer, if our compassion is not growing and instead there's more arrogance, then we have to really reassess, how we're relating to our practice. And so as practitioners, our relationship with our Dharma practice should be that our mind is, that the qualities of heart and mind are developing and that the afflictive mind states are diminishing. And then whatever we do, we'll carry those qualities into the world, and we'll also feel the positive results of that in our interactions with others.
다 잠바 생기데 가르스나 레칼레는 공니 시바나 시데 칼레는 나 잠바 유나 근데 레콘데 페 코란서는 레칼레데 티쇼 지진피게 로데스 남다 근데 레로데스라 코란서 공존도 랑데 좀 말랑게 시데 잠바고 단힘 증나는 데데는 근데 유노볼 레로드도 잠보 차르스 코란서도 라자토야데 모서로 저서 특이하대요. 프랑스 레콩 레가야 고찬 철라자 더고요리. 근데 찍찍띵 팀드스니데 진짜진짜데. 대하 고소는 강해요 말이. 근데 대하 말고 레가지 슈레고도 진진데 진짜 산노 진짜 레가 슈레고도 나는 강해 슈도 진짜질래. 레가 충충질을 침부 차로です. 사모 모두 생겨서요래. 아니 니빠텔라 딱 모조드나 가르스나 야카 튼저야포 데니 소소 데사야포 튼저 유아테 소소케 지와나마칼레 게와사 히른제베게 튼저지 차데요레 데마도타 띵창 잠벨리는 강아 뇨다 슈지 정거요레 데라 정거야 김치데 가레 차데스는다 밀라 잠바다 닝게미나 데니 잠벨레 뇨다 정거요레 데니 데 중야데 저데 레메게 사샤리케 데니 레 스니데 나멀레 요레 야칼레 요레 데니 수수 걸 레메게 사샤레 요레 아 데데 냠네 야포 제제스 레다 사르 요레 다 띵창 우효로야게 소제키데 요레 데 키브갑살라 다치 우효데 타고 진다서 삼노 짱짱 땅데나 턱고 산사들라 깔레 카보리 턱먹고 산야데 깔레 카보리 간신 하고 야카글레 게와 사실 야칼레 야포지유나 델라 뽕보 야포지 차르 에 델라 희난단 선나제데는 피도 가야마 Then that Susoku Holo Capsula Latini, Shambat Ninji Gomna. Tan Uho Jaka de la Shipdek Jakaji Chahu, Sanitini, Uho Lo, Na, Deni, Pink Yorima, Pink Yores. Yamato, that Semja Sinini Mako, Sano Mambu Cordena, take a pinto Shira, your maritente. In the Sosoke, Uho, Sologonate. Jaka de la Shedi Jakaji, Mamma Pibade, Jaka de la Shipde Minatin, Zambeling, Bangar, Yoda, the Deji Chado Yores.
So, in our work life, for instance, to practice in such a way that, when it comes to our jobs, that we really, rather than sort of thinking of our job as something that we sort of have some, that's like a chore, that's kind of something that we don't enjoy, and that, is only something that we do to make money. Instead, to sort of change our attitude so that we're seeing, for instance, our work life as an opportunity to practice, to develop an attitude of loving kindness and compassion to all of the people that we interact with in our work life, and having the intention or the aspiration that our work may bring benefit. Instead of only thinking, oh, I'm doing this just because it's a responsibility and I need to make money, to instead really have, make an effort to generate the thought, may my work bring benefit, and may I be able to have, may I be able to help others through, and even small ways, in whatever way that we can, because we find that if this is our objective, then also we'll end up doing better in our work. And as a result, maybe we get promotions, or we end up, getting paid well as a result of our joyous efforts in our work, with the attitude of wanting to generate loving kindness and compassion to others. And so then over a long period of time too, even just like small acts of kindness, or small ways in which we're bringing that practice of loving kindness and compassion and goodwill into our work, ends up really paying off. And so in this way, everything is interdependent. There's this interdependence in everything that we do. So we can't really isolate our work life from our practice. They're really one and the same. And also, having this understanding of karma. So when we have difficult situations that arise in our work life, difficult relationships with others, that this is because of some sort of there's some karmic reason for that. And all of the benefit and good fortune and well-being that we enjoy in our lives is also a result of karma. So to have a sense of gratitude and appreciation for all the things, that are going well, that we experience relative peace and ease and well-being, in our country, that we have a good home, that we have, the health and, good conditions in our family life. All of this is a result of karma. And then when there are difficulties and hardships, likewise, this is a result of karma. And how we relate to those difficult situations in our life also creates karma that we will then have to experience the ripening of in the future. And so we become very careful, to both appreciative, having an attitude of appreciation and gratitude for all of the good fortune and well-being that we experience in our life, and then also being careful to create further causes for that same good fortune going forward. And everything, there are different types of karma that we experience. There's karma that we experience individually. So there's the individual karmic ripening, and then there's also collective karmic ripening. So karma that we experience is like a family, within a family. Karma that is more kind of like within our country, global karmic ripening. So right now, for instance, also we're in a time where there's a lot of emotion around like the election. So we're voting here in this country, you know, you're having an election, and there's a lot of stress maybe that some people are experiencing around this, and a lot of worry, a lot of fear. But the fear is not very helpful or productive. So the main thing is that we, you know, if, for instance, because whatever the karma of the country is will determine the outcome. If there are the karmic conditions for, you know, a positive outcome, you know, for the like overall population, then that will determine like the outcome, whatever the karma is. And so, for instance, when we have a lot of fear around it, then it doesn't, that doesn't bring any benefit. It's much better to have a hopeful attitude, to have a mindset of love and compassion, to make aspiration prayers that are really based on the wish for the well-being and benefit of everyone. And as you vote, for instance, to carry that sort of aspiration in your heart, you know, for the well-being and benefit of others, and to, you know, cast your vote with kind of a positive prayer, if you will, a prayer for the well-being of all. And then that carries much more power, you know, in kind of determining the overall outcome than having an attitude of fear or anger, you know, in your heart when you vote, and in general in this time of election.
아니 다 잠바 신이데 닌제 신이데 되니 인피기 로리 다 뭐만 줘봐 나는 가래 송으시나 르는 바빠다 가인 바를 좀 산로 뭐만 줘봐는 르는 바빠다 가인 바를 좀 산로 있어요스 근데 매일 치마 쪽 르는 바쁘다 르는 바빠야라 매일 치마 쪽 근데 인지 쇼티 버체스나 얘는 탈바다 탐지 집에 덮어 저 성을 요레스 당어서 인지 제세 열 망보제 열에 변나 다다 이 롱반되나 가시에 마상 초고 우야고 자열에 가시에더니 마상 강에 근데 강바메바 이제제 대저 참 레먹게 그 사샤데 대저라더니 제 장인지 장촉숨 제는 프랑스의 임바다야 아니 취제 조보조모나 핀조 아니 제 계자제 시나 먹게와게 계자데 마시는 게버초게 제 뭐야 고차야 뭐상 고차야 계자시야 어딘지 제 인피게 로 신이데 아니 장인지 신이데 인제 미티게 소소게 요나 제야 방고드서 짐바타야 미나 소소게지 셈낭니 인제 다 코란라 다다 렘게 사샤나미게 드지 강을 총차 다드드레존 코란라 게버 사제정 고방도 코란테 강을 머정 후진 인데 삼샤와나 데니 셈신이 된 것도 로기나 시레스 셈 로기나 시 로기데 니치드 찍드 졸라로는 찍게 그 바르가마라 에도 것도 셈 찍길라 장인지 장축 셈데 유잖아 아니 셈데 벤저와 침보요래 배차야는 남을 뭐 컨트롤 차워지 컨트롤 빠자고 말이 근데 나무 파 로데네 치 남을들 알라 치 초와 지범이봐 근데 레콘을 레나다 레콘 뿜보이나다 레로이나다 근데 잠바도 인지 미죠 머제나 근데 파로데 초와도 갈려야다 근데 얘니가 Chileka lo el saña de droga tinga masona drink masona la hot rago le ka meden nan roje tank buto san tiji tswa de na ja kare ta meji jamba da yije yung kiji me yuna le kon nan rona teni le kito so tswa ya ko kita hiego mare teni nangmeji na nangmala kontro tsawaji meji yuna tsawade ko kontro lango mare ya zini tsawado kyala sare te semte pe rewa chimbo yore te ndichi ta ngoso Afrikando da tawani kamba mejo zabele na mapo yore kanha nyora je solo treya yimba tang treya mi ta koran solo tata tile le mekyo sasha na mi kete jinyo shi nenji san ini semke je ninji hyukimbo je tere je suso la pi ini koran la pingres semsen le pen rewa chimbo yores
So the more that we can make a conscious effort to develop a mind state of loving kindness and compassion, the wish to benefit others, then the more benefit that will come to ourselves and to others. So the benefit is twofold. The more that these qualities blossom in the heart and mind, the more happiness it brings all around. So it says in the Madhyamaka Avatara, a single moment of compassion that is so strong that like it causes goosebumps, or for the hair to stand on end and tears to fall from one's eyes, that single moment becomes the seed for complete awakening, for complete enlightenment. And so this, when the more that we kind of nurture that quality, then the more we will see the results. So there's so much diversity that of experience that different people have in the world based on karmic, their karmic ripening. So there are some, even though there's kind of a similar maybe situation, there's kind of overall, like in a single country, you have some who are very wealthy and their situations are very fortunate. You have others who are really destitute and really impoverished, really suffering. There are some who are homeless. Then in the witnessing of those situations that are less fortunate than your own, it's so important to really actively have cultivate a reaction of compassion, loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta. And if there's something that we can do to help, if we have the means to practice generosity, to give to those who are in need, then it's really important to do so. But even if you don't have the capacity, if you don't have the means to practice generosity, still just cultivating inwardly a loving attitude, a mind state of compassion and love towards others is so powerful in that, in its effect. And we can understand this, in that, sorry, I'm kind of going back to something else she said. She said also, in our relationships with others, for instance, our friends, our companions, our loved ones, how we direct our speech, for instance. So, making an effort to not go in the direction of non-virtue, like criticizing or, gossip or, kind of going in the direction of non-virtue, but instead kind of cultivating wholesome discussion, for instance. This also has a really far-reaching effect or benefit. And we can see how, we're all so connected, that even just a mind state of loving kindness and compassion has a beneficial effect on others. Like, because she said it's like we're kind of like electricity, they're the two wires that meet or that become connected. And if one is not functioning, then there's no like electrical connection there. Both have to be functioning. So in this way, when we can really affect one another just with our minds. So if, for instance, we have, somebody has like a loving attitude, they even walk into a space and they don't have to say anything, but their energy affects other people. And in the same way, when somebody's really angry, then that anger affects, where our minds are connected, so we affect one another. So if somebody is a boss, for instance, at a workplace, and that boss comes in and they're really angry, it affects the entire kind of atmosphere of the entire work environment. Is somebody, in a family, if they don't even have to say anything, and if there's anger, if they're very angry, then everybody feels that. So it's the same with loving kindness and compassion. When somebody has loving kindness and compassion and they walk into their workplace or they're in their work environment, it has this effect on the minds of everybody who is there. And same with anger. If there's anger in the mind of someone, then it affects the minds of others. And so it's really important to be aware of this connection that we all share energetically, and that how our minds are really connected. And so, yeah. Like in Africa, for instance, or in other situations, that are not as fortunate as that we experience, our kind of affluent country, when we witness the suffering of others, to be sensitive to that suffering and to really feel a sense of compassion brings so much benefit. Because of this way in which our minds are actually connected. So when we have compassionate response to suffering, there's benefit to ourselves and there's benefit to the one who is suffering. There's overall benefit because we are all so deeply connected. So even just in our own attitude of mind, we can bring benefit to the world just in how we relate to our mind.
다 우초 저는 가르스는 니마도는 다 종아이셔데 참마 조보 차데르스 종아이셔데 조보 차다 땡창 너 참마치 단지 쳔보차 이니 처자 제절망 딘지제데 다 종아이셔데 자라랑 요레스 종아이셔데 남죠나 다 우초 남바사제 바게 베는다 long day, so golden drivers. Golden work, long dance. I mean, motor. Then, share can also be called some about ladder. They pay direction by your any Saturday, motor. Shadow driver, short the charden driver. Any Nimada de so, any Jordan driver. Same the non-cotton driver. 다 땡창 마창마지 단지치 대창 장니지 산초 샘데 미드 근데 종아시에다 잘라랑네 다초 칠로조야 카셰르 칠로조 강여체 카셰르 천동야메 바까르네체 그래서 참 종아시에다 잘 미마 조고차 땡창 노토케 카레스 초가 진짜제데 초가 yang cho me sa cho chi cho yu san de cho ya de do sa chi den den ba zo mo go nga zo ba zu de de ne de ni ngo zo ka re sen naga laura le to control jo ha de no sorta jalang res jana chares rin shin de so de ni ka on ngo de jin jan hin ji me de de ta 사용 조야 아니 사용 쇼게 뭐자야 메르메도 좀 봐야 근데 지금 내 정보여레스 아니 롱드 좀 봐서 저는 등산 가장 지나서 배랑 어디게 가면 롱드 것은 남죠나 목는 저와 요리됐다 진짜 좋아요 참 진짜 차도다 무슨 제 가르스나 장진지 산초 샘때 신피그 로데미나 무슨 잠벌레 강아 중요하다 먹어서로레스 아니 뭐야 고제 유나 잠벌레는 대피터요 그러나 우섭정야 고제 유 장진지 요케의 자카들 빼야 고자레스 아니 고유 성적 제거야 고유 성적 제거야 가르스나 근데 자신도 시다 마다야 딱 사실다 로마셔야 고쳐가 다음에 방송 망하고 소관면서 괜히 간정만 좀 뭐야 다 들리지 고유 성적 제수 모두 가오잖아 근데 저 요아시에 더 차르스 이 등산 다 뜻을 강에 정도 상황 모두 요아시에 되니 저 자차도 그랬지
Shila Gata de Pachudinam Chica Lebrore, and they Tata Tes Samlotan Tes Jeva. So the also this attitude of loving kindness and compassion extends not just to like other humans, but non-human beings, animals, even like spirits and entities we can't see, the environment. Having a kind of an attitude of loving kindness and compassion also extends to even the elements, because the outer elements, like the 4 or 5 elements, are also in our very body. And so there's kind of this connection or this friendship that we share with the elements. But these days, during these times of degeneration, the greed and self-interest, the self-grasping, the mind of self-grasping has become so strong. And there's such a kind of ambition for progress and reliance on, for instance, technology and so forth, that the way that we interact with the outer elements of the environment has gotten completely out of balance. So it's important to understand that we are, that the outer universe that is comprised of these elements is also our own body. So for instance, the wind element is our breath. The earth element is our flesh. The water element is our blood. The sun, or fire element is like our digestion and the kind of inner, element of fire. The space element is our mind. And so in this way, there isn't so much, there's not like a separation between external and internal. But when self-grasping is very strong and there isn't much cultivation or development of loving compassion, then there is this lack of respect also for the outer elements. And as a result of like collectively how we're relating, for instance, with the environment, then there's a lot of disruption in the environment that we're experiencing. So instead of this sort of beneficial relationship that we have kind of naturally with the elements, where we're friends with the elements, instead there's this disconnection. And so as a result of, for instance, cutting down many trees, damming waters, really mining and taking many resources from the earth, then the elements have, there's this imbalance, and it's like as if, there's disruption, and almost like the elements have become our enemy. And so there is, as a result, fires, forest fires and earthquakes and hurricanes, and so this is largely in part to this, or can be attributed to this disconnection that we've developed between the outer elements and ourselves, our bodies. And so the more that we were, because of this lack of the loving kindness, compassion, mindfulness, the wish to benefit others, and then there is also disruption in the environment, in the natural world, with nagas and non-human spirits, and so there is more disconnection and disruption there. So part of this practice of developing loving kindness and compassion also is to be sort of extended to awareness of our natural environment, and protecting the environment, and so to sort of heal this disconnection with the outer environment, with the elements, is and kind of befriend the elements again, is also part of this practice of inwardly developing the mind and the qualities of loving kindness and compassion and mindfulness.
디츠
다타 치주 늘 방치가래 다든 가능성 주도.
아니 다 된대진 영화 지어들 잘라랑데 되는 무조건 장인지 장초 검다 이제 수수 거버 통에 되니 가르신 방도 수수수수라다 심지 들어있나 심지 들어있나 들어져 있는 그 마음이 동 먹고 깨자시미시 근데 게데글란돌미시 들지 강해요 아무도 마스니데 치 남주유바 장인지 산초 소유바 매제이드 근데 뭐도 그치 고려성 제 방송을 시작하면 이제 제와는 근데 정화지에 모두 또 차도르스 간신다 산재게 힘만 송결 간신 내 연결을 먹여 연결을 수자 연결을 송결 가르치는단 나니 거염 나사데 그 내데 몸무슨 내데 가르 나사 가르 있는 몸무시 들리지 한 정화를 해야될 노체 땅들 나니게 모두 들리지 나사 들려 그랬어 거염 나사데 정화를 노체 땅들 나니게 레 에데 나사 들려는데 내응우데 마세지 나사 가르 나사 가르 기억하는 연구 그래서 시 말이지 다 들리지는 수소 하고토는 무슨 시락 라이엠도 시락을 비주던 제 레게 왔으니데 게베 제베 대화당 메게베 제셔 메게베 나미게 되니 제베 동하이 바하콘 들리진 냠네 제서는 되니 뭐도 고려 나자 나메 나자 자카나자 야고제 십대게 자카제 차르스
고려 나메 자카 Penny Shibe. And so again, this disconnection and sort of this collective unawareness, the sort of collective greed where, there's been an excess of taking from the earth, like mining and so forth. and also a disregard for the other living creatures, animals. So we're kind of like the stewards of the earth, because as human beings, we have the responsibility to look after the other living beings, so animals don't, for instance, have the intelligence to be able to understand, for instance, the difference between virtue and non-virtue, to abandon harmful conduct and to take up, altruistic conduct, or to practice virtue. And so we as human beings have that ability, and so therefore we really have a responsibility to actively cultivate the qualities of love and compassion, to be the protectors of the other beings, to be the protectors of the earth. And so the Buddha foretold or prophesied that there would, during the degenerate age, that there would be starvation and violence, or weapons and epidemics, epidemics previously unknown to humanity. And we have seen this, for instance, with the COVID epidemic, which was unrecognizable at first. It wasn't something we had ever experienced. We'd never seen, an illness like this before. And so this is exactly, what the Buddha had also foretold, that in this time of degeneration, that there would be epidemics previously unknown to humanity, that the elements, that there would be more disruption among the natural elements. And so this is the ripening, the full, the direct ripening, or the fully, there's different types of karmic ripening, one of them being the kind of fully or direct ripening of particular karmic causes. And so, Shira Ramshin Karilarian? Shira Ramshin
Masinete, Namjuya Poyamba, Shirakana Yibaris. Aisina Shirap Deketini, Shirap Deke Bijuya Potek Tanswana, then Jimping Law Chanchok something Jogoris. Shirap de Malayo, the Shirap Bijuya Potek Tan Machina, then it thinks on Mantok Jayak, Shirap de Norna, then Mantok Jayada, Jekila, Yomiatan Troya. The Shirap de Shirap Bijuta Machina. Ndete chayo. A shirap deke yapo je biju tanshiwan yimpe ke lo deke aperna tenchang moda namde. Oh, that kala dramada. Eso shirap ke yapo biju ta. Ma sinye de pe karesana leka chimbo karena le tapatiri. Ta dendro je la je walang na. Tene shirap biju tanshi mari. Mai, keja sheshi mare, donda ko mare. Paranzola devan tupa yore. Donhar mendo basemne yore de. Paranzola deva dramashi. Megeva pangmishi. Tene, mamishi tomogo. Tene, tendrola kivalans. Tene, portu de donharsi. Tene, donharsa bimisaka yores.
So we have so much potential as human beings because we have this faculty or this capacity of the intellect. We have the potential for great wisdom. And so if we use our wisdom productively or in a way that is beneficial, then the potential is inconceivably vast. But so if we use our wisdom well and our capacity for the intellect, with altruistic intent, with loving kindness, with compassion, with good intentions, then there's so much good that can come from that intellect. But if we misuse the potential of the intellect, then it can be very destructive. So that same sort of capacity for intellect is what has also created a lot of negativity in the world, a lot of destruction, weapons, very sophisticated weapons and warfare and so forth. But you know, when we use that capacity for the intellect well, then there's no limit, you know, to what can be accomplished, you know, by a human being. So if we, you know, when born in other life forms, for instance, as an animal, then there isn't that same capacity there, that same potential for the intellect, and there's not that ability to distinguish in the way that we are capable of distinguishing as human beings between, you know, what is like virtue and non-virtue, and we can't like articulate in the same way, we can't understand in the same way. And so now with this life that we have as human beings, we have to really understand how much potential and power and capacity is there, and make a decision to use that capacity in a way that is truly productive and beneficial, rather than the reverse or the opposite.
근데 남바 산지 버스니데 남 샘데 지지 동데 장니데 장조 샘데 그 주송와이나 근데 어 딩도브리 근데 말은 노파마다 말 콘트로 말라 말 셰당 말라 말 닌지고 근데 샘지나 파마케 파마레도 나심 든로에나 나 파마 리샤 섬니 로지 Teni mai na che moto chewa mama ke tropo da tromo pinja pama tendritu sane teni sama chi kares nam che ke nan ritso ala to kares ya tende che me pa che yina teni ma che ina ke ma che ina kares na korang nga ro che yimpi lo de che mina korang kare chana cha ya po chana cha du po chana cha sam ro cha Then the Jimpi the law the Goya the packaging.
And so in the practice of Buddhism, kind of the most sort of fundamental essence of our practice in general, and in our everyday lives, is to avoid harming others to the best of our ability. So really doing whatever we can to avoid harm. So, you know, trying, and when, for instance, afflictions like anger arise, to try to work with that in such a way that it doesn't cause harm, to work to diminish the destructive emotions such as anger, and to do so to avoid causing harm, and to do what we can to benefit, to try our best to benefit and help others, and that comes through really understanding our interconnection. So this belief that we have that, you know, all beings really have been our parents, have been our mother or father at some point in time or another throughout all our countless lives and cyclic existence. And when we have that kind of regard, then there's a feeling of interconnectedness. So we can really feel connected with everyone, like we're friends with everyone. We're all one family. There's a feeling of being one family. And so when that feeling of interconnectedness is not there, then there's isolation. It's like, you know, we feel separate from one another, and we then really are only focused on ourselves, and we think, you know, I need to do what I need to do to benefit myself, and whatever happens to that person happens to that person, and there's not that regard or that feeling of interconnectedness and closeness. So it's really, you know, to avoid harming others and to build that intention to benefit by simultaneously increasing the feeling of interconnectedness, and that we're really working to, or kind of training to see one another as like family, you know, that we've all been one another's mother and father and children and brother and sister and so forth, then that really works to also increase that mind, that impulse to benefit others.
아니 가르스나 진피질로 장족섬 유바제이나 유나 나머지 제일라 공pro 차오 제일라 라 공pro 차오면은 뭐제 거랑 다 주로 그랬어. 제되게다 몇 자산이요나 자산제일 공pro 차오요 제일 공pro 차오면은 거란이 네 뭐제 제일 냠데 다 주로 그랬어. 간신은 제되게 다 자산이 자산하고요. 거란이 제일 공pro 차오요 제일 공pro 차오면은 거란이 다 주로 그랬어 냠들. 가가 장 말했어. 아니지나 다 대들 컨트롤 타워는 되게 다냥만 다 거랑 드레 컨트롤 라인샤 니지에다 거랑 가래 차오나 니지지 니 딘지지자야 컨트롤 랑데야 컨트롤데야 랑지리스 거 딘지지 니지지 야샤나 되고 마차 네차 네 거란이 참고 자그레스 아니게 컨트롤 타워지 니오나 네 제게 레자 제게 되는 로바쇼 아니 된데제 차르더니 되서 참 춘직대 가래나 직직라 핀송케 가래스나 장 샴바다 닌지 세와 그 된데 제거야 그렇게 좀 버렸어 니 된데 맞제 제 다다 만데나 야 히다지 잖아 다랑 동할 동하레스 강을 사화지 잖아 강을에 어때인데 지 자산은 저 파마인데 빈자는 저 가래 나 찍기를 세워고야 돼 진피길로 대 진피길로 또만서나 따형은 야고야 돼 대치 모르겠어.
So, you know, of course, what becomes very challenging is when we have, you know, for instance, if there are those who are, you know, when we are in relationship with, or we come into contact with somebody who's very angry, that's when it becomes, you know, maybe dangerous to lose our love and compassion, because generally, you know, if there's anger, then there can be like this response to respond to anger with anger. But she was saying that when you have two people, like for instance, if you have a couple and one is like generally pretty angry and the other one is not very angry and can really respond to that anger with patience, that chances are that even if there's just one who is not prone to anger in the same way, or who can skillfully react to that anger, that they will stay together. Because when there is anger and then the response to that anger is equanimity, or even more so, if the response to that anger is compassion, patience, and love, then there's often a good chance that that compassion and love can pacify the anger in the other person's mind stream. So whereas, because anger is wind, actually, and she said, what happens is when the wind rises and there's that wind of anger, and then the reaction to that anger is anger, then they both just feed each other and it increases the wind of that anger. Whereas if one person is angry and the other person maintains their calm of love and compassion, if they are able to stay in a state of beneficial intention, and for instance, if they think, oh, you know, poor thing, they had a bad day, you know, and there's this feeling of this response that is compassionate and understanding, then there is often, it is the case that that kind of response can help to calm the wind of the other person's anger. But if both people, if there's this reactivity, and then so there's the anger, and then there's the response of anger, then it just increases the anger, and then there's explosion, and chances are the two people are going to separate and go their own ways. But, you know, when we, you know, then maybe there's the tendency to say, try to find somebody else. And then you enter into a relationship with someone else, and very often the cycle will repeat itself. So whenever in all relationships, whether the relationship of a partner, a spouse, a loved one, a family member, a friend, a sister, brother, you know, whatever the type of relationship, when there's this understanding of how important it is to maintain a mind state of loving kindness and compassion in reaction to somebody else's anger, then it will really, there's a potential there for to bring benefit to the relationship, whatever it is.
Nyamli Jinki Jaina Yang Dela Parsin Jonan Zupa Layati Bodayo.
So that's why patience is so crucial.
Zupa Sinite Zupa Gata Mispe Lelo Marite that Chunan Che Parsin Jonan Yahudo. Anything this also get Zupa Gonsoina, Etini Karesina. Yimping Lord Chaders. Chadid it in Koran Champo Chadres. In Zuba Mina, the Name and Jaka and Jata things on Zuba Shidami, Dini, Jaka Jaka Tropa Shude, Zuba me, Dini Hingi me, all the little chat, Dini Mankange, Jakar Kange, Yoda Sama Dini Jungaris. It's some getting Zubata, Ninja. It's a song the journey, Maya Puchaya, Namaya Puchaya, Jakaya Puchaya, Lombadia Puchaya, Digi Guno de Pe, Guno Zambo, Progoya to catch him.
So motivation, it all really comes down to intention and motivation. And so we have the, for instance, the 6 perfections, or the 6 paramitas, and among the 6 paramitas, patience is the perhaps the most important. So there is no, you know, it is not easy, but it is so powerful. Because when we have patience, we can maintain, you know, a mindset of goodwill in the face of very difficult and challenging circumstances, in the face of, you know, somebody else's anger or ill will. And so there's so much potential for maintaining harmony when people know how to practice patience. If there isn't the capacity for patience, then there is the only outcome can be conflict, especially when met with challenging circumstances. So, and this is the case on an individual level, you know, in our interpersonal relationships on an individual level, within like a household or a family, and even, you know, within a community, within a country, and in the entire world. So all of the difficulties and hardships that we witness interpersonally and experience, and all of the conflict that we see on a global level, could be greatly assisted and avoided through the practice of patience. Because hand in hand with patience also there's compassion. So when these two are united, when there's patience and there's compassion, then there's the potential for really great for harmony. So we have a little bit of time left, and she said she would like to just open it up to, you know, any questions that people might have, any questions or discussion.
Okay.
How do you, or how should you proceed with, you know, repairing karma, or, sort of relationships that are past, you know, someone has died or moved on or something similar, the person's no longer, you're not able to interact with that person. how should you go about filling that kind of time?
Tene Garci Pena Le Che Mishamba Nyamdu Le Che Yona. Tene Pena Garci Metumba Rawa Cha Bayana. Tene Amete Shiva Yana. Yamna Mete Yang Chenang Rawa Mena. Tene Di Yang Zobju Che Yaki Chedu Tapshi Akshokare Yore. Pena Pumso La Drawa Zoma Tupna.
Le jiu metel drava zo matan.
Great, Pena Garci de Toba Rawa Shova Yana. Like Jachi Yoayana.
Lesa
Teni barna teni de pena yene yang de me de la drawa yo mare pena me de shi sarwa yana yang na da yang drawa gaya mena teni de
ambo den drava yu
yang
tene
drawa yo teni de shi soma yana de yang de mitumba drawa chaba yana
ya
teni de zobju che ya kitapshi ya sho kare
aso zochi jiate ngarani hima kiwang hima le de nyam de chados atin sanko mini matomne kaga chason ako kon melut todana melut sedin je chaho sanni hona ja melut toyuna melut sedin je teni ko ngi sonson donhar menyo yurjini teni koranga chukan jewate teni de samne hona jen korang la pi teni korang ke le de sa morang le morang na le sa hale de jangne teni given deva nyongres
So she said that's a very good question. Generally, so the main thing is to do what you can, to repair it from your own side through the kind of purification of your own intention and attitude around the connection. So like developing loving intention towards the person now, and also through thinking, sort of recognizing that whatever connection you had in this life is the result of some karma from the past. It's because of karma that you came together. And if it is that relationship ended in disharmony, that and especially like for instance if the person died, as you mentioned, then to make aspirations for them, like to pray for those people, that and for their well-being going forward, like may they have happiness, may they be protected. If they are in lower states of existence, may their karma be purified and may they take birth in like higher states of existence. And whatever karma that they have accumulated, may they go forward accumulating positive karma that then ripens for them favorably, in states of happiness. So to develop that aspiration of goodwill and beneficial intention for that person, from your side. And in general, it's said that that there's no redeeming quality in non-virtue, but there's one redeeming quality. There's one redeeming quality to negativity, and that is that it can be purified.
Would Drupon please comment on the approach towards the method of liberating emotions as they come up?
Sharway do that rowa sharbro.
Le tambo paina nimon de kagris nyamni rami pina teni ya ta nyamni chimbo ta tawa kal yotana nimon de cha chanandra hedang chanandra tamo chanandra kungro chanandra ti ngo la ta devan kol do che yo mares ti ngo ya chan ko ti ji samadang ti nga ta den korang yishi ngo le ko chargari rondore penna nankala chingba yorete nanka humpore chingba yorete chingba de ta de mare namto de chingba na shires a ji ji se danya yo mare kaya yo mare le tangpo bain ta tisu kale kapor di jisendang ene teke di jisma bon dansuna nimong jisa dansuna ya ni ka tsawre ta ka da tene kong de shan tor tagres timba na des.
So she said, so this practice of liberating upon arising is kind of an advanced one, that actually, we have to relate to our afflictive emotions according to our capacity. So as a beginner, the way to relate to our afflictive emotions is in working with them and controlling them and not falling under their power, or in avoiding kind of their cultivation, if you will, or applying the antidote. But as you advance in practice, so somebody with kind of more experience in practice, then there is this ability to relate to afflicted mind states and to thoughts that recognizes their empty essence, so that there's this understanding that there's no real kind of solid reality to the emotion that we're experiencing. And so there's the ability to see it, but not get caught in it, to not follow after it. And then in that experience, one can see the wisdom essence, the wisdom behind the affliction, if you will, or kind of that its essence is empty, and therefore the essence of simply, pristine awareness. And so when that essence of pristine awareness can be seen in the energy of the emotion and there's no getting caught, then when the emotion arises, it can be liberated upon arising. So the example that is given is like clouds. So clouds appear in the sky, but they have no substantial nature. They are the essence of the sky itself. So the clouds arise, but they don't get stuck there. They arise and they they sort of shift and then they dissolve. And they move through the sky without kind of leaving any trace. And so when practice becomes more developed, then we're able to experience whatever arises in the mind, thoughts or emotions, as being like clouds passing through the sky of mind, that there's nothing solid or substantial there. And so we don't follow after them, we don't get caught, but we also don't have to block them, we don't have to resist them. And so there's the ability to see their empty essence as they arise. And when that capacity, that ability is there, then it's like relating, the relationship between the sky and the clouds. So then thoughts and emotions can be liberated upon arising.
I wonder if it's possible to be too patient with angry people, so that we almost encourage them to stay angry by being too tolerant. Their anger. I would appreciate what you want to say something.
Tini zupa gomya keche bore sumyarwa niriyam samsamami kontro sapochen yana tini yona gadi yana zupa gomna tini kongso yang tadung kontro lanya ki chokchen rawo tegyo marebe penati sam jaya ki pena jumse matrena tini o zupa gom tini kongso tadung kontro lanya ki chokchen rawo Treyu marere samsam la yang shuk chinko che la boga marere.
Karesna Koran la model ta gore. Koran la karesna che ta pa control landen susu control malanchi. Koran tafi kadru de kuja karshi gudu. Ta goya ke chimbore. Koran control lande Koran gti kala control che lana. Ene Koran ne tene Tuba Chagres, and Korani control Malang the Kapsar, the Korana, the contra lango Marang in Sikare, Niposhi, control Malang. That Zupa gom, the Zupa Yaputa Japson, that Zupa the Katamis, that Karesina. Koran kill. so shu san ro re ge wa shu san ro re den du da da ngo zo nang ba san je ba ke zu pa gom ka den zu pa gom ning je gom da de re orang kung ro lang da ka orang ke den la lin du kya ki ya na orang ni chopa dopo je chaya ma do champo chaya ka le ka pores ni orang la chi lulu de cha ka sala che zam zam che dewan la chi lulu de cha ka ni orang ni tumpo so ya ka chi de ni ke da ni bo she go ya ke chi pores.
So she said, everyone's different, so it's important to kind of be aware of like what is kind of the specific situation and what's going to be most skillful in that situation. The important thing is to not become angry yourself. So if somebody is angry and then your response is to get angry, then that is almost always going to result in more conflict. There are different methods that can be applied with you remaining, in a state of patience and not becoming angry. But most often, she said, the best thing is to sort of lay low in the midst of the anger and to practice patience, like while, somebody is experiencing anger. And then when they have calmed down and they are like in a state that is not triggered, and angry, then to discuss, then to have a conversation and sort of, try to like work with them on whatever the situation is. But most often, if we respond with anger, then it's only going to inflame the situation. And she said, actually the reason also we practice patience and compassion, like it's not only about the other person, but this becomes an accumulation of merit for us as Buddhist practitioners. There is no, the virtuous power of practicing patience and having compassion in the face of anger is so tremendous, that there's such an accumulation of merit for the one who is able to practice in that way. And kind of irregardless of what the effect is externally. But very often, if we're, someone is angry and then we respond with aggression or by saying something, most often we're going to have a big fight, or it's going to result in more conflict. So it's best usually to practice to hold patience as much as we can in this situation. And then when there is, when kind of there is not a lot of emotions present when the person has calmed down, to have a discussion and try to reason with them, in a way that they can understand.
Korang ke zuba gom tene dekan korang la na control tawa che lab de ne ma peleris le ndu tente ji zuba ti gom korang le de chang ro res.
Oh, yeah. And so, and especially when we experience like interpersonal conflict with people, that is always because of some karma. And so when we have, it's like a ripening of karma, like negative karma with one another. And so if we can practice patience in the moment of that ripening karma, it helps to purify the karma.
Le sinye kares na pena na cha chung chung te yuna o ngaran te na cha chung chung te ka he ke ta na cha do ko do na na do san te ji sen korso do ro le ma to ya ndo ma res na cha chung chung te yu ate so ke le ngam che wa ngam ngaran ke ma la dong de ya de ke na cha ti le te ngaran sa sha te ndu ngaran ke ti ngaran na do ya te ni chang cho ne te de mona je so la ne pa la o pa la ni so le da chang ro res te de no to nang chu ke to chu si ne de to de ni chang ka re sen so ke ka re sen shin ji tin ka re che na chi so ke le de so chang ya ta ni chang ni ji ma ya po cha ya da de so res
So for instance, she said, if you experience some health problem, you know, or you're sick in some way, and maybe it's not a very big health problem, it's something relatively small. If we relate to that in a way that's really negative, and we're like, oh my God, I'm so sick, and like, this is terrible, and how do I get better? And we have fear and reaction, then chances are the illness is just gonna get worse and worse. But if we have that same illness or that same health problem, and then we relate to it differently and say, okay, you know, this is a karmic ripening. This illness, this problem is clearly, you know, it's surely because I have maybe harmed someone or abused someone in former lives, or like, you know, because of the harm that I've done to others in the past. Now my body is experiencing this karmic ripening as a result of something from former lives. And so through this illness, may this karma be purified. And there's kind of this positive relationship with that illness. Then it gives more energy and kind of confidence in the face of that illness. And it becomes there's less suffering as a result. And there's more potential for like a quick healing when we relate to it in that way. So really, you know, everything that we're doing in our spiritual practice is actually using our circumstances in such a way that we're able to skillfully relate with whatever it is that we're experiencing, and then it all becomes a skillful method for spiritual growth, both in our like Dharma practice and in like a worldly sense, because everything can go towards like the purification of karma, and everything can be related to in a way that increases our compassion, increases our love, increases our goodwill, and our wish to benefit others.
I have a couple parts to this question, I think. So just in a comment, it's been really wonderful to hear your teachings on compassion and patience. Really useful. And I really connect with working with the elements inside and outside of ourselves. And so I was curious when you said that anger was from wind. I have a background in Ayurvedic medicine, and we would look at that more like fire. So that's one question. Is that coming from Tibetan medicine? I studied it, but it's been decades. And then I've been thinking about it while I'm sitting here. I wonder if this is the right view or not, because I have a little bit of background in the 5 wisdom energies as well. So if I look at karma, you know, karma dakini, and think, oh, okay, that could be the wind, the air energy coming up and creating the sense of anger. That makes perfect sense. So I just want to check that view and also have a little bit more on the Tibetan medicine view, if that's what I'm referring to. Thank you.
Nampo cultivate upon namsong to jite la partu penal nipje dang zupa gongso la be mixaya bojum song yang di tesa samlo tangi yore gain sena mo di jakar gi men yorwa ayurveda sewa di mo so jangi yore adini chi ki konro di lung re song yorwa Teri lung yemba te pena kongso jakar di lukso la di me yemba samgerawa me yangrawa pena jingwa jila ginanga lung ma yemba me yemba samgerawa yang di bupe ki men la di men ki bupe men samno tangna di lung di jingwa lung dangrawa yorbe konro dang mo yang di pena kare yeshik nga la yang tesa nyamnyong yore di lokchong tesa chenyong yore tene de yeshik nga gi nupa soso yore tene pena le gi kamro samlo tangna tene le gi kamro mene chene le gi kamro yena mene chene taro rawa yene yang di konro yang kasi di drawa di yang lung nyemba gi drawa yoba samlo tangna tene jimsen dang tesa hako tuki yore di dang
Leki karo lam kare.
Pena leki karo pena de yeshi kare de tawa rupe
yeah. Mina na tata long control la de long la de control la de cheshi de long de kan se ngo so ma control la de ni long sa de pe ma tong tata sang ma la yore control lang de na control ma lang de serin bo shira de ma res kan se na ni yi shi ke long tang na yi shi ke long tang ni ni mong ke long ni da di yi shi ke long de reason ma che ren po de ya ni sem sa wo cha ya de le cha ya ni di control lang so na di control de ke long de morang la so de de sa me nyam de yore kai na ngo zo nyawa de nyawa ge jasik saye me control lang de dong ba ma jang cha ro res o ma tong cha ro res de ni mong long cha de long chen bo de de control lang de ga se ni me de che tong ma cha chen bo den chang la de ji me ge mo sho ya je go ya de pe ge chen bo la de o den de re den morang ke ayo ve da jang de pe ya por re da tin nyam de la yang me da yo ai chen na me den ro yo re ai sna me de cha wan ba long kre chi po mai ba de den je wa yo re o de de ne cha wan ba control lang dong ba mar jang cha ni karasna class na program chin nyan ni mo ko de de ji cha ne ni yin kan na cha control chen bo na de de cha res.
So she said, so first of all, she didn't, I think to contextualize this a little bit, what I'm understanding from what she's saying is that, so her saying that anger is connected with wind or that it is wind is not actually in connection with the 5 elements, but rather she said that, you know, it is said that we have 2 types of winds kind of in our body. There's like the primordial wisdom winds, the wisdom winds, and the afflicted winds. And so when there's affliction, then there's a predominance of afflicted winds, and so therefore less wisdom wind. But she said you're correct in connecting like anger with fire. That's true. She said, but there's also this wind connection because she said, you know, when somebody gets angry, like their breath becomes shallow, they have less, you know, less breath. And it is also said that like when somebody has a really strong propensity for anger, it leads to illness, it can shorten lifespan, and that's because it creates a stronger predominance or propensity of afflictive winds, because it's an afflictive emotion wind, it's not a wisdom wind. When we're residing mostly with the wisdom winds, this also is connected with longevity, so it increases lifespan. The mind becomes more clear, you know, there's sort of more vivid awareness, and the anger, yes, connected with wind, it is the nature of wind, and definitely has a connection with the fire element, because the direct, like, karmic ripening of anger, you know, if we think of how that manifests karmically or in the sense of like a birth, is connected with the hell realms, and the hell realms being like fire, you know, there's the hot and cold hells, but generally, you know, there is this connection with fire and anger, and, you know, when somebody becomes really angry, their face gets red, so there is like an increase of heat, and you know, and as she mentioned again, like the breath becomes shallow, and so this can really have harmful effects on somebody's health. And just, she said, you know, and science has proven the health benefits of like laughing and smiling, you know, and the role this also has in like longevity, increased longevity and better health. And so that That is kind of how she sees it. And she said, it's great that you study Ayurveda. That's wonderful. And that is correct. Like she would also say that anger is connected with the fire element, and how destructive, when there's a lot of propensity of anger there, it's just a complete disruption to the person's winds, to their digestion. They can no longer enjoy food. It leads to insomnia. They can't sleep. And they're all like heart conditions that can come from this. There are all sorts of, health complications and problems that can come from increased anger.
I have a couple, there's someone online who has a question. And we've been talking a lot about anger and patience. What about someone who experiences a lot of sadness? And how do they relate to that in a way that they can find contentment?
Is that the person online?
Yes.
Yeah. Tini control ki korla mapola yorwa tini yang de yina yang pina miche tindati sem garila bugre de ningu rao yana komsoke sem kyo rao yana sem mare ninglong
Oh, yeah.
tini yang sem garina kyo yana pe kyo e ki sem ki korla yang komso de yang shi de
We control it.
control mayamba
Nimbo. Hold
sempang gadina
Yeah.
sempang
Semkyo.
yana tering kumso tendati kande de yang mepazo ya kitapsu yang
Ale. Semkyo yin da me paso ya ke. Jena. Da karesana. Nangpa chue na chu de demke na da semkyo yin. Na karesana soso ke ngone mele cheti topya ngaran pe. Karente semkyo goya mdo ngone. Tamjek jobje tan dimbe mele rinchi topya chi gawa gongore. Dini tem na chu ke maje kenje na da soso ke karesana. Na karese da tingchang lupjong jea, wobjong jea. Dini tata chudi karela. Wobjong ngola te. Ani semtro jea jik deso de takshin dramada jea kechin boris.
So she said, when it comes to sadness, working with our, like antidotes to sadness, gratitude is a very powerful method for working with sadness. And especially like as Buddhist practitioners, and there's really specific like contemplations for developing gratitude, like contemplating the preciousness of human birth, with the leisures and endowments, and really contemplating in such a way that you become really aware of just how much you have to be thankful for, grateful for in your life, and also what an incredible opportunity it is to be born as a human being with all of these favorable conditions to engage in spiritual practice. And she said, and for those who are not Buddhists, still, gratitude can be a great method for working with sadness, but also exercise. So like really, like there's great benefits found for having less, or working with depression, for instance, through like different forms of exercise. Also, she said there are wind exercises, like I think she means kind of like pranayama, different types of wind exercises. And there are a lot of different, methods, that connected also with health, she believes, but probably what we as Buddhists mostly would use to counteract depression or sadness is increasing gratitude and contemplation on precious human life.
Jackson Laroche.
Is that helpful?
I think so. Sounds pretty good. I have a couple more questions. One, could you comment on compassion in working with someone that's dying, somebody that's dying, you're working with them, helping them through the process?
And the second question is, when you have a profession or a career as a policeman or as in the military, how would you approach it if you're a Buddhist? Could you please comment on that?
Tini di Drupon yore, po garsi pena chuto yamna pena ngoshe pashiki yona. Tini di pena ninje che ya ki tapshi yaksho gare yore kumso ropa che ya ki tapshi yaksho gare yore di Drupon tampo. Tini Drupon nipa
Shiwana.
mishi yore.
Yeah, judo.
Yeah. And then di mayamba garsi mechek mami yana police ki me yana down mami yana
Yeah.
police me yana
Yeah.
then namba yana
Yeah.
then di soso ki lega gare che tu gare namba yana
Ale. 다 당보때 미 주로 미시 송에는 다 무슨 나가 줄라. 나 나치 신기 주로 다 주로에는 나치 신기 제데 프랑스 시카테르 로파치야. 아니 로파치데 갑사라 책도 같은데 말았지. 자니지 산초 센터 때니 책 대화친기 문남 파도 도야 이제 걸 때니 프랑코 가시션도 가서는 물체도 되면 물레데 강에 동안 많이 봐. 근데 물레야 포직 톱쇼트 문안들야. 시카드로 봐야 보지야. 인터레스. 아 플러스 그 마음에 들어이나 남바이나다. 그런 레게 마음에 그여래. 마음에 그인데 근데 자르카 뽕보게 가래지 라나마도 스스로 라와요 말. 라와 메디타 텐텐 도가 갑사라더니 당 나랑게 텐텐 chen drogo 스스로 레게 텐텐 차서 근데 다 자카트로 야고지 차나선 텐텐 레와요. 텐텐 아 소소 그체 수그도부터스나 니제 당아랑 레데게 눈에 느게 사선 진 셈네더니 니 주파체 샤파체나 아야 요레스 드니 남바메나 따서 제트야 깔레 카보라 남바 산제파메나 샤파체 제단 시마레 어텐데제데니 잔니제 곰 잠잠 드니 소소 제이메라나 깔레 카보라 된자 어데데데니 데데진 공홍데 데 다침본데스 피지 게베 핀전 조지 먹게바시 베나 게와스니 페톱침보르 쳇다다 쳇다 시메로 봐야 고제도 그런 피지 먹게와 피지 프랑크 레게와 침을 지기 사셔는 나미데 공 드롤 제와라네데 나마케드니 냐르데야케 나마나시 차도 그런 드롤 데 강아 요른 마시 마르 동고 마르 나물제 다 드롤 가시는 고 땅케미 팔아서야 미들리지는 들리차다 요르 드니 또데 셈고노레스.
So she said, you know, as for the first question about like a sangha member who's dying, so if you know you know they're Buddhists, then there's so much potential to like help them in their practice at the time of death. So to be very careful, you know, how you speak with them, what you say to them, you know, that you are speaking to them, you don't say things that might cause their mind to go in a negative direction, but really say things to keep their mind directed, you know, toward the Dharma, to be loving and compassionate with them, to help them, to care for them, you know, in their illness or through their demise, to really pray for them and practice for them, to do aspiration prayers for them to be reborn in Dewachen, to pray that they, you know, to pray that they'll have a human rebirth. So then all these things can be really, really helpful and beneficial to the person who's dying. And then as far as the question about, you know, somebody in the military or a policeman, you know, if you know that is one's profession or one's situation, then it's a karmic situation. And, you know, it is difficult because there's really not much freedom in that situation because you're really kind of under the direction and the order of your superiors. So then you have to follow, you know, what the leader is, you know, directing. And so then, you know, to recognize that that is a karmic situation, and to have like the purest intention possible, you know, that through, you know, these activities, wanting to protect the country, to help the country, to, you know, you know, with the aspiration that whatever, you know, the activities go toward the benefit of others, then that is kind of like directing your intention towards the most kind of virtuous intention as you can. And then if you have to do harm to others in the process, then to recognize that and to feel remorse and to do, you know, purification of that, you know, to do, you know, confess and to purify whatever negative karma that has been accrued in the process. And then, you know, there's the potential to purify that negative karma, whatever it may be. For those who don't have that view, then there's no thought of like, you know, regret or confession or purification. And so then for those individuals, then we can have love and compassion, you know, because they don't recognize the harm maybe. But mainly with everything, you know, it really comes down to intention. So the more altruistic the intention, then whatever the activity is going to have a more positive karmic outcome than if there isn't a pure motivation there. So, you know, even like whenever we have pure intention in any situation, can be so powerful. You know, even in like, you know, the relationship that we have with our pets, she said, you know, like dogs and cats, you know, that also there's like the karma of those animals to come into a situation where they're treated well in a good household and they're fed and they're cared for, you know, and then when we really have like affection for those beings and treat them well and give them food, and then also think about, you know, all of those who don't have that good fortune, you know, who can't get any food and who are in more dangerous circumstances, who aren't cared for and looked after in the same way. You know, then that also becomes like a great kind of virtuous accumulation on our part because of the way we're directing the mind. So everything depends on how the mind is directed.
Yeah.
So first question is, as long as we do connections, we do karma. So how to make sure we can, during the process of life, we can detach. So that's
We can what? I'm sorry.
detach.
Detach.
Yeah. It's like so make sure one day, no matter which day it is, when the end of the life, I can say I'm complete and never return to this space to go to next space. This first question. Second question is about so how to read all the sign in the life.
How to what?
Sign.
How to read signs?
Yes. For example, I go out, my tire flat. So that's me, I should cancel today.
Wait, what? When you go out, what?
Yeah,
Tire
that's like,
flat tire.
Oh, flat tire.
yeah, sorry. Like you have flat tire, and then you say, oh, this is flat tire, that means I should cancel today's activity. It means I need to provide something, or just mean that's natural process of the life. So you know, sometimes good sign, sometimes bad sign. But I just want to know, treat them as indicator or treat them as natural process. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, so Because kabore kegoya. Tani dampo de penati tama drawa la pension drawa yorwa. Tani de tama leo le. Tani de penati tender draw. Tani tender de la tani tama yang penangato mitse zo ne. Tani ngato tenda de juba machia kichitu tani ngato june tenda yangchar de la yong magoa. Patekoa la mache magoa que endadi
Chupa machepa.
chupa machipa sea down de
Yong
la yong magoa
Tisata.
de la corva la piona
Oh, no, the tisata.
So when you said about like to make sure that we don't have to return, were you talking about like not returning to samsara?
So, because I feel this world how this world has lots of different states, right? Not just Earth, right? So I just mean, you overcome karma, you build connections, and then you return back to Earth. But have any sort of way to, detach. So you have connections, and so I can lead
okay,
my life,
I
my
see.
soul. I done the whole circle. Now, like I finished my homework, I'm done. I'm going to next
Okay.
space to
Okay.
got a new experience from others.
Pena deni de dena nangchi samlo tangi yorwa pena de ngato mila mambo drawa legi drawa yorwa ini yang chapa la deni chichina di drawa pena yangchar di la chiwa legi yorwa ini yang ngato dena chapa shida machia deni yang le yapo zoya deni di la yangchar le magoa gichidu deni kande chibo gere di dewa dambo
Landa karen koal tena
Korwa
saja.
de la yo mare de zambuling de la
Lemma goli.
yeah de korwa ge samlo tang yo na mena ni
Okay, yeah.
deni de mayimpa de dewa nipa de la pena top dramanda yorwa top tender Teni di tenda yapo yore hakoya di tenda dupo yore hakoya kande hako tukare pena kasi mota ki korla chun chorna pena chilo kakpa chilo lale ko teni yang di korlo chola doso di ta ya dukja che yojire tenda dukja che yojire da nga yang di pache nga di sacha che la doya ki charji yo yini yang di tenda dukja yimba ki jimsana teni madrona ya gere Trinity yang ha goya ki kande yang na te ramshi le shada samlo tanya yung mare namto drabore te na chin pena samgona yang na tinda tukja yimba samlo tangona teni tinda dang ta dinzo yapo ha goya ki chidu kande chego gere.
Kowa lemma goli. Le jangona. Teni gevele. Megewa ducha shetan tomo ngaja chato tamji pang pang geva le ya poti sa sona teni deva chini shinka chegres deva chini shinka che sona teni koala yanjar cheg mares ani nipa te dordi je shuyana ta modern kolon kas na te leri mandro na samya te mare tan zamda pache signore Teni de sosokan roya ke chaye yata de modern kolo de le roman rigris. De le ri de hema perna les ni de la. Na pendo hyogen. Na ba chanje ke chu drab go sam bo. Teni chu nima de le drab. Disna yo ke na le ri de den ri maris. Teni ka babjong jana babjong Lobjong moved to the Jagam, the Nimaki Lobjong said, Param Lobjong Robo, and Rota Maris, a Larry and Maris. So, Lobjong, Yapoti, then he Lobjong Masiri, Yapoti, Nanjong Payapoti, Lobda Yapon, then he Munechi, Param Lobjaka, say Yapo Matona, then he Suso Larry and Jena Digris. They mato Soso Lobjong Majesi.
So she said, as far as your first question, so like the way that we would refer to that in a Buddhist context is like, how, the question would be like, how do we purify our karma so that we don't have to return to samsara? Or, how do we avoid being reborn in samsara? And she said the main thing is really like the practice of gathering virtue and practicing as much virtue as we can and avoiding as much non-virtue as we can. And then, and then like working with our minds, working to tame our minds, working to purify the afflictive emotions of attachment, anger, unawareness, jealousy, and pride. And then maybe there's the opportunity, for instance, or when we die, we can take rebirth in Sukhavati, in the pure realm of Sukhavati, and then we don't have to, or Dewachin, we don't have to be reborn again in samsara. So then the question about signs, she said, like, if, for instance, you have a flat tire, you shouldn't think like, oh, that's a bad sign, I shouldn't go do the thing I was planning to do. Sometimes, like, it might be karmic that there's a flat tire, like a karmic ripening, and sometimes when we're doing things, there are obstacles, and that obstacle is a result of karma. But instead, like, you just fix the tire and you continue, you fix the tire and then you go do whatever you were gonna do. Mainly, if those activities are beneficial or virtuous, then you don't want to let any obstacle get in your way. Like if it's Dharma practice or if it's study or something. So you overcome whatever obstacles that arise and keep going forward. So for instance, if you have the intention to practice Dharma, then whatever adverse conditions, that might arise, whatever obstacles, whatever negative signs, you just persevere, you keep going so that you can continue in the direction of virtue. You don't say, oh, it's my karma, this isn't karmically destined, so I shouldn't do it. Or same with like your studies, for instance, if you are studying and then like you have some, like it doesn't go well or you like fail a test, then you don't give up and say, oh, this is karma, like I'm not, this is a bad sign, I'm not supposed to keep going with this. Instead, you persevere, you study hard and you pass your next test and you like keep going forward, so rather than, kind of, we don't want to like surrender, we don't want to become kind of like victims of our karma in a way, to say, oh, this is like, I don't have the karma or this is bad karma, so therefore I give up. You don't do that. You keep going forward, she said. Yeah.
지금 놀라도 지금 마성이가 나도 오늘 내거 보면
Oh, okay, so do you want